Another big story that we're watching: Boeing has agreed to plead guilty to a criminal fraud charge surrounding two fatal 737 MAX crashes from 2018 and 2019. The case was brought back into the spotlight after U.S. prosecutors said the plane maker failed to comply with a 2021 settlement agreement over those crashes, which left 346 killed. And here, as we're continuing to track the move pre-market, as of right now, it's up by about 1.2% right now.
Ian, as we take a look at that early reaction here with shares up just about 1%, we certainly can, I guess, try to figure out exactly what this means for Boeing here going forward. You talk about the fact that this was largely expected going off of the reports that we were getting last week. But now the question is exactly maybe what this means for some of those defense contracts going forward and whether or not that puts some of those contracts in jeopardy. And then also just some of the risks that this brings up here for Boeing when we focus about the fact that, hey, maybe this is obviously it's a hit to their reputation, but how big of a hit, what this means for investors, what they need to do to win back some of the confidence clearly is a big question mark at this point. Absolutely.
For more on this, let's bring in George Ferguson, Bloomberg Intelligence senior analyst, to discuss this just a little bit more. George, as you see this guilty plea come through from Boeing, what more largely does this signal for the company and the way ahead?
Yeah, so I think it's a good sign from the aspect that they're starting to clear some of these problems, some of these legal overhangs, and that's going to help them focus on the most important thing to do with the company, which is to build more airplanes, generate more cash flow, and generate profits, right? We're really looking for a strong rebound for the company in the back half of the year. They burned $4 billion in cash, in 1Q. The company told us to expect a similar level of burn in 2Q. We saw less airplanes delivered than we expected, so it could be even higher. They had hit sort of a sub $10 billion cash on the balance sheet level at the end of 1Q, came back to the capital markets to raise $10 billion in bonds. Again, I think they burned another $4 billion in cash. They could have about $13 billion of cash as they close the second quarter down. I think that's a low level of cash for the company. So again, they can't keep burning cash like this. They've really got to start to focus on building airplanes. And so this agreement with the Justice Department, as well as the purchase of Spirit Aerosystems, so they can improve quality throughout all their factories, is really part of the turnaround for the company. The next really big hurdle is they have negotiations with their most important union. I think they're already ongoing. Contract expires in September. That union wants a 40% increase and a guarantee of building the next airplane up in the Pacific Northwest. That's going to be the next big hurdle, but Boeing's got to start to put these behind it so it can build airplanes and generate cash.
George, so do you think that this is a big blow to Boeing's reputation? You talk about some of those upcoming events that we need to focus on here as Boeing does look to move forward, but how tough is that going to be, at least in the short term?
Yes, I mean, I kind of feel like the reputation's been pretty sullied here. I think it's frankly probably better to get this done now. We all know they've had problems. We all saw the door plug saw the video of the door plug come out in the Alaska Airlines. I think if they could put this stuff to bed now, it puts them in better shape, like I said, back half of this year and into next year, not talking about it. But I think we all understand there were problems. And so I think the reputational damage from this is slight compared to all the other issues they've been having.
George, what's interesting, in our own Alexis Keenan pointed this out within her reporting up on Yahoo Finance Now, as she was speaking with a former federal prosecutor, there's revenue and profit implications here too, because of if they are indeed, found guilty as they've entered this guilty plea, ultimately this impacts their ability to do government contract work as well. So what are the potential ramifications that could spill over even to the valuation for Boeing?
Yeah, so my understanding was, as long as the company wasn't considered a felon, I think, look, I'm not a legal expert. Somehow I think there could be a felony charge and conviction against the company. They could potentially have problems and not be allowed to take, government contracts. Now, I think, the way we look at this, there are products Boeing supplies to the U.S. military that I just don't see any near-term substitute for. One of them would be KC-46 tanker. It's a program that's been in the news. They've taken a lot of charges on the program. Airbus bid for and actually won it initially, but then after an appeal, Boeing took that contract over. It would be really hard, I think, to move that contract at this stage back to somebody like Airbus. And the tanker fleet for the U.S. military is 50 years old. It needs to be replaced. So I think there's a lot of need. We're watching backlogs in the defense industry build. So I think the government wants to find a way to make sure Boeing can be a government contractor, an important defense prime, despite whatever they're pleading guilty to here. So I think they'll find a way through this.
And George, when you take a look at this, Boeing's now going to have the oversight of a monitor. It's going to help, as we'll have to spend more on safety and compliance, maybe when building aircrafts moving forward. I'm curious just the cost of this. When we talk about the fact that clearly the cash burn rate had already spooked investors looking forward to this, maybe this is going to add even more costs, especially obviously when you factor in the fine. How big of a headwind is that going to be?
Yeah, I mean, so I don't have a good number on that because I don't know what this monitor costs. What I would say is, I don't think it's going to be a lot. I think what's going to be more important, again, is going to be this union contract that's coming up that I think could add 0.5% to 1% to some of the cost of manufacturing. I think that we could all probably agree it's not like Boeing couldn't use more oversight here, and it would be more costly for them to continue to have problems. And so I think, look, in the long run, we kind of know near term, next 2, 3, 4 years, you don't have a Boeing that has margins that will look like what were in the pre-pandemic world, right? They're just, I think the book of business is in at a lower price point because Boeing lost a lot of China business and they had to go out and fill the backlog again. They did it at some good customers like Southwest and United, I think at lower prices. We know the costs will be higher with oversight, like this overseer, as well as they need to have internal controls that have more inspectors in place and more training. So we kind of know the company's not going to have margins that look like pre-pandemic. But look, again, I think they just need to stop burning cash. And that's the beginning of the improvement in this story. And I think you can only do that through more commercial builds. And they got to start getting that done as they get here into the second half of the year.
George Ferguson, always great to get your insight. Thanks so much for hopping on with us this morning.